When it comes to booking a ski trip in the United States, the number of available options can be almost dizzying. America is home to a wide range of mountains of various shapes and sizes, and even when it comes to the destinations that are large and exotic enough to justify flying to, there are dozens of viable options. So as you figure out your next big ski trip in the States, which resorts are best? Well, in this video, we'll rank the destination ski resorts in the United States from worst to best, and we'll also cover the pros and cons of each one. To keep this list to the most relevant mountains, we're only covering resorts that have on-site lodging and have over 2,000 acres of skiable terrain, which generally corresponds to places that are doable for a week-long vacation. Also, if two separate resorts are interconnected by a trail network and they have at least one shared ticket or pass product, we're counting them as one single destination. This will become very relevant later on in the video. With that all being said, let's jump in. First up on this list, we have California's Northstar, a ski resort that might look pretty good on paper, but has a number of issues that really hurt its enjoyability for a true destination ski trip. On the plus side, Northstar has pretty impressive infrastructure. The vast majority of chairlifts are high speed, and the resort has some nice lodges, especially on the resort's front side. In addition, when conditions are good, the resort also has some pretty awesome tree terrain. However, Northstar's terrain is just way too bland to seriously compete with the other ski resorts on this list. Despite a 3,000-acre skiable footprint, many runs feel quite similar to one another, leading to a much less interesting experience than one might expect. In addition, both Northstar's crowd flow and arrival experiences have become a lot worse in recent years. The resort gets packed on weekends and holidays, and while the lift network does have some useful redundancies, hours-long traffic backups can occur when driving to the mountain. Finally, like other Tahoe area resorts, Northstar does not have the same snow quality and reliability as the US resorts further inland. Northstar is pretty big and it has some solid tree terrain, but that's about all it has going for it as a destination ski resort, and it's much better viewed as a regional mountain for those who live in the Bay Area. Lift tickets are atrociously priced, but the resort is thankfully available for far less on the Epic Pass, provided you purchase before early December. Next up, we have the only ski resort in Washington on this list, Crystal Mountain. Crystal is home to some rather impressive snow totals for the United States, seeing over 400 inches in a typical season. The resort is also a joy for experts, with obstacles such as rocks, cliffs, and trees, and even some mandatory straight lines. And when it's clear out, Crystal has some of the best views of any North American ski area, with striking views of Mount Rainier, which is Washington State's tallest mountain. But despite its charms, Crystal has a number of limitations that make it less than ideal for a true destination vacation. First off, while the resort does have some on-site lodging, it's extremely limited and books up quickly. There are some lodging options within driving distance of the resort, but parking reservations are required on weekends and they can fill up quickly. The resort spreads across 2,300 skiable acres, but accessing this respectably sized footprint can be tricky due to inefficient lift operations, which often result in long lines. Additionally, while Crystal receives plenty of snow, it tends to be heavier and wetter than the light, fluffy accumulation often found in the Rockies, and when it comes to the aesthetic, overcast skies are more the rule than the exception here. For those looking to break away from the typical Rockies destinations and specifically hit some spicy expert terrain, Crystal might be a solid choice for your next ski trip. But the mountain lacks the crowd management, snow quality, and true destination resort feel of the other mountains higher up on this list. Crystal's lift tickets can get really expensive if you go during a peak time, but you can actually get some pretty decent rates on less popular dates. The resort is also a member of the Icon Pass, and this is probably your best deal on access if you can purchase it before it's off sale in December. Next up on this list, we move to Utah's Powder Mountain, which is probably the strangest destination mountain in North America by a number of measures. The resort offers an upside-down layout and an advertised 8,464 acre footprint, creating a stark contrast from nearly every other mountain on this list. Powder Mountain's low resort traffic results in some of the best snow preservation of any ski resort we've ever tried, and fresh snow can stay untracked for days. In addition, lift lines are essentially non-existent, even during peak times. However, Powder Mountain's quirks aren't all positive. First off, the resort's acreage claims do not hold up to scrutiny, with less than a third of the advertised footprint accessible via lift service to the public. And while lift lines are never a real issue, Powder Mountain's on-mountain infrastructure is somewhat behind the times, with slow lifts in certain areas and limited on-mountain facilities. Finally, Powder Mountain has introduced some fairly controversial updates for this upcoming season. The resort is expanding its lift-served footprint and upgrading its ancient Paradise lift to a high-speed quad, but it's also closing a few terrain zones to the public and reserving them exclusively for private homeowners. Powder Mountain still has a lot of unique benefits, but its limited amenities, less than perfect reliability, and difficult or impossible access to much of its advertised footprint hurt it against much of the US resort crowd. One-day adult tickets start at just over $100 if you buy for an off-peak weekday very far in advance, but if you want to go on a peak weekend or holiday, good luck getting one for under $200. Also, there are no lift tickets being sold at all on February weekends this year, and you'll have to be a season pass holder if you want to visit during one of those times. Next up on this list, we have Kirkwood, our first resort on the south shore of Lake Tahoe. Kirkwood is a lot more no-frills than many of the other resorts on this list, with minimal buildup, an incredibly remote footprint, and striking surroundings. The resort also stands out with some of the best extreme terrain in the country, with chutes, cliffs, and couloirs that can seemingly appear out of nowhere at times. In addition, Kirkwood's relatively high elevation results in favorable snow quality for a West Coast ski resort. But while it might be an expert sanctuary, Kirkwood isn't the largest ski resort in the world, and its 2,000-foot vertical drop is closer to some regional mountains than most other true destinations. If you're not an expert, Kirkwood might not have much for you to do. Kirkwood also suffers from an outdated lift fleet compared to most other resorts in the States, with several areas served by slow, fixed-grip chairlifts that involve quite lengthy ride times. Kirkwood is fantastic for experts who don't need a fancy resort experience, but its short vertical drop and limited lower-level terrain mean it won't be as well-rounded as many other US ski destinations. At least lift ticket rates, while not cheap, are somewhat more reasonable than other similarly sized mountains in the States, and the resort is also available at a significant discount on the Epic Pass if you buy before early December. Next up, we stay in South Lake Tahoe and move to Heavenly, which, unlike Kirkwood, sits right over the edge of the lake itself. This circumstance makes for some absolutely phenomenal views, with trails that directly overlook the deep blue lake and feel almost as if you're looking down into another season. Heavenly is one of the few ski resorts in North America you can ski or ride in between states. One half of the resort is in California, and the other half is in Nevada. And the town of South Lake Tahoe, which sits directly beneath the resort, has plenty of activities after the slopes close. But besides its one-of-a-kind lake views, Heavenly doesn't really stand out all that much versus the rest of the US destination crowd. The resort has some great intermediate and advanced terrain, but beginner options are extremely limited, and while there is actually a bit of gnarly expert terrain, it's concentrated in one specific area of the resort, and while the resort's 2,700-acre skiable footprint offers quite a lot to explore, it is a huge pain to get around, with a generally confusing layout. Finally, like the other Tahoe area resorts, Heavenly snow does not stand up to the resorts further inland in the US, especially in lower mountain areas. Heavenly is a stunning resort, but if you care about more than just views on your next destination ski trip, there are a lot better options out there. Lift ticket rates are absolutely insane, but if you want to save on access, you can buy an Epic Pass product through the beginning of December. Next up, we move to the Panhandle of Idaho, where Schweitzer Mountain offers a lower key alternative to many destinations around the country. Schweitzer's under-the-radar profile pays off during peak times, with a lot more reasonable lift lines than one might expect from a typical destination ski resort during major holiday periods. Schweitzer also stands out for its near tree-lined glade terrain, with widely spaced trees making up a sizable portion of the footprint and often retaining some really nice powder stashes when conditions allow. But Schweitzer has a couple of things going against it that may not make it the best choice. The resort has some fantastic views when it's clear out, but thick fog is a common occurrence at the resort, and at times it can be hard to even see a few feet in front of you. And while Schweitzer does have a decently sized terrain footprint, it's not nearly as big or diverse as many competing resorts elsewhere in the States, with a convoluted backside lift setup making it tougher to take advantage of some of the terrain than it should be. Schweitzer does have the right chops to make it a solid choice for intermediate to advanced visitors looking to avoid the crowds during peak times, but it isn't quite large, varied, or consistently clear enough to beat out the other resorts on this list. At least lift ticket prices aren't terrible, with one-day adult rates topping out at $135 if you buy at the window and going for modest discounts if bought in advance. The resort is also a member of the Icon Pass, with unlimited access on the full pass and 5 days of access on the Icon base products if you buy before early December. Next up, we move to the United States' biggest publicly accessible ski resort, Utah's Park City. Park City's sheer size means it has an almost unthinkable amount of terrain to explore, with slopes that will take weeks to fully cover, if not an entire season. Park City is also home to one of the best ski towns in the United States, with an extensive après scene accessible right off the slopes of the town bases. Combined with the resort's location less than an hour from the Salt Lake City airport with no traffic, Park City is a plainly fantastic option for those who value post-slopes activities and want the easiest travel experience possible for a true destination ski trip. However, Park City's raw footprint size should be viewed with somewhat of an asterisk. Rather than one singular, well-integrated resort, today's Park City Resort is actually the combination of two formerly separate ski areas, Park City Mountain and Canyons. The two resort sides are only connected by a singular gondola, making the Park City and Canyon sides function more like two separate mountains than one coherent ski area. In addition, the word is out about Park City, and crowds have become a serious problem during peak times. And finally, while Park City does have plenty of terrain, its high alpine bowls and expert slopes are somewhat lacking compared to the best mountains on this list. Park City is still a great option for the casual skier or rider who values a good, easily accessible ski town, but in terms of the overall mountain experience, many other better options exist. Park City is also home to one of the US's worst value lift tickets, with one-day rates going for as high as $328 and starting at well over $200, even if you buy in advance. At least Park City is also available on the much more affordable Epic Pass suite of products, so if you plan on visiting this winter, be sure to pick one up before they're off sale in early December. Next up on this list, we have the duo of Brighton and Solitude, which are located in Utah's Big Cottonwood Canyon just east of Salt Lake City. Brighton and Solitude are technically two separate resorts that wouldn't be big enough to qualify for our destination criteria on their own, but they're linked by a trail network and available for joint access on the Icon Pass. Brighton and Solitude really stand out for their snow quality. The resorts receive exceptionally dry and light accumulation, and they receive quite a lot of it too, with powder days, especially at Brighton, being a common occurrence. In addition, the resorts have some notable strengths that complement each other well. Brighton is home to a solid terrain park and some really nice beginner and intermediate terrain, while Solitude has some great expert chutes. However, even when viewed as one continuous resort, Brighton and Solitude lack the size and amenities to beat out the best ski destinations on this list. Neither resort is the tallest in the world. Neither Brighton nor Solitude has the best designed lift network, and while the lifts themselves are generally modern, there are quite a few choke points where major lines can build up. In addition, if you don't have an Icon Full or Base Pass, Brighton and Solitude do not have a shared lift ticket product that offers full access to both resorts. Brighton and Solitude are good choices if your main priority for a trip is the highest quality snow and terrain for a range of ability levels. But for the true big mountain destination experience, other resort options have them beat. One-day individual lift tickets for each of Brighton and Solitude can be had for somewhat reasonable rates if purchased in advance, but these tickets do not offer access to both resorts, and you'll need to have an Icon Full or Base Pass product if you want to hit both in the same day without using two tickets. Next up, we move to Deer Valley, which is our first skier-only mountain on this list. In other words, sorry snowboarders, you're not allowed to ride here. Deer Valley stands out most for its hospitality. The resort is full of mountain guides at important trail junctions, staff ready to carry your gear at some of the base areas, and even complimentary ski storage during your lunch break or overnight. If you ever want to stop in for a break, that's typically not a problem. The vast majority of mountain areas are within easy reach of the nearest lodge or restaurant. Deer Valley also offers impeccable grooming operations for those who love carving corduroy, and their cap on lift ticket sales means that lines are never too bad. But while it's certainly upscale, nearly the entire mountain is built up with real estate developments, making the whole experience feel heavily commercialized and not isolated at all. In addition, while Deer Valley does have a small amount of high alpine bowl and seriously technical expert terrain, the resort does not specialize in these types of slopes, and other mountains will better serve those looking for a true wow factor in their next destination skiing experience. It is worth noting that Deer Valley is embarking on a massive expansion project over the next 5 years, turning it into the third biggest ski resort in the United States by skiable acreage when all is said and done. While we won't know until the expansion is finished, we expect to see more of the same real estate developed and groomer-heavy terrain that the resort specializes in now. Deer Valley's biggest drawback might be its lift ticket price. One-day adult tickets are just as expensive as that of neighboring Park City, starting at well over $200 on off-peak weekdays and even cresting the $300 mark on peak dates when taxes are included. Deer Valley is included on the Icon Pass, but only the full and base plus pass versions, meaning that no matter what, accessing this mountain will involve quite the steep down payment. Next up, we finally leave Utah and move to what's maybe the most under-the-radar mountain on this list, northern Montana's Whitefish. Whitefish's remote location results in a much more local feel than the typical US ski destination, and serious crowds are rare even during peak times. The resort especially stands out for its glade terrain. Thanks to the area's unique climate conditions, the trees are often coated in a thick sheet of crystallized snow that makes for an otherworldly feel. Whitefish also sits a short ways away from a great mountain town of the same name. However, like other ski resorts in the northwest part of the United States, Whitefish has serious fog issues throughout the winter season. While the thick clouds help a lot with snow preservation on the generally south-facing footprint, they also make visibility difficult. In addition, Whitefish's 2,350-foot vertical drop just isn't that impressive compared to most destination ski resorts in the States. And finally, Whitefish's remote location makes it tough to fly to, with limited or no direct flights from many largely populated metro areas around the country. So Whitefish has a few problems, and it isn't the biggest resort out there. But it really stands out in one particular category, and that's value. While it's not on any of the major multi-resort pass products, Whitefish is one of the rare US ski areas where lift tickets are still relatively reasonable for what you get, with one-day lift tickets still going for under $110, even if you buy at the window. This isn't something you can say about any other ski resort on this list. Next up, we get to our first resort in Colorado, Steamboat. The mountain especially stands out for its glade terrain, with a wide variety of skiable tree areas spanning various widths, species types, and difficulties. In addition, if you visited the resort in years past, Steamboat has recently made some massive improvements to the resort experience, with much improved crowd flow out of the base area and an absolutely fantastic expert-oriented terrain expansion. But Steamboat still falls short in a few key areas. First off, the resort is not where you want to be if you're looking for high alpine bowls. In addition, Steamboat lacks the same wow factor that makes so many other Rocky Mountain ski resorts such desired destination spots, with a much mellower and less distinctive resort summit than you'd get at the ski areas higher up on this list. Steamboat offers fantastic glades, and it's also next to the bustling ski town of Steamboat Springs. But other resorts higher up on this list just offer more unique experiences for a US ski vacation. Steamboat's biggest issue is probably its lift ticket price. One-day adult rates top out at an absolutely crazy $299, and off-peak tickets aren't much better. If you want to visit Steamboat, you should probably pick up an Icon Pass product before they're off sale in December. Next up, we move back to the great state of Idaho to cover Sun Valley. Sun Valley is all about the upscale experience. The resort is home to what might be the nicest lodges of any ski area on this list, and the mountain has views to boot, with some absolutely stunning bowl areas and views of snow-capped mountain ranges that feel like they go on endlessly. Sun Valley also sees fewer crowds than most other US destinations, thanks in large part to its remote location, and the neighboring town of Ketchum offers an authentic ski town vibe and plenty to do after the slopes close. But Sun Valley suffers from one major disadvantage that takes it out of the running for a top spot on this list. The resort's biggest weakness is its snow. While the snow quality isn't bad, the limited quantity makes for inconsistent conditions. Sun Valley is also tougher to get to than most competitors elsewhere in the States. If you don't want to fly directly to Sun Valley itself, it's a nearly 3-hour drive from Boise. Sun Valley has the upscale nature and beautiful surroundings to flex its destination chops, but it's just too unreliable and remote to make for a compelling vacation for most people. Lift ticket prices are a huge downside as well. For adults, one-day rates go for well over $200 during peak times, and you can't get them for much cheaper even if you buy well in advance. Sun Valley is a member of the Icon and Mountain Collective Pass Suites, but at least for Icon, you only get Sun Valley access on the Base Plus and Full Passes, so these options aren't all that cheap either. Moving back to Lake Tahoe one more time, next up on this list is Palisades Tahoe. If you're an expert skier or rider, Palisades has the goods, with some of the most extreme skiable cliffs, chutes, and couloirs anywhere in the United States. The resort also boasts a stunning footprint, with unique terrain features throughout the resort and awesome Lake Tahoe views, and a large footprint as well, with over 4,000 skiable acres across all of its terrain zones. But Palisades Tahoe suffers from a lot of the same problems as other Tahoe area ski resorts. While the resort sees very competitive snow totals on average, accumulation patterns are typically feast or famine. In addition, snow tends to be wetter and heavier than that of the destination resorts further inland in the states, and due in part to a moderate climate, freeze-thaw cycles regularly occur. Palisades Tahoe's 4,000 skiable acres are also a bit misleading, as they are not accessible on a continuously skiable footprint. Instead, the full resort is actually comprised of two formerly separate resorts, Squaw Valley and Alpine Meadows, that are only connected by a very lengthy gondola ride. Finally, Palisades Tahoe is a known entity, both nationally and for those in the regional cities nearby, and both crowds and parking are a mess on weekends and holidays. Palisades Tahoe is an expert's paradise on a good day, but the resort is just too unreliable and crowded to make for a practical destination vacation for a lot of people. Like many of the other resorts on this list, one-day lift tickets go for absolutely insane prices, especially during peak times. If you want to visit Palisades this season, you should be sure to pick up an Icon Pass or 4-day Lift Pack product before they're off sale towards the end of the calendar year. Next up, we move to our final California ski resort on this list, Mammoth. Mammoth is a lot further south than the other major ski resorts in the state, as well as the majority of other destinations around the whole country, but it has a few things going for it that allow it to edge many of them out on the destination stage. First off, Mammoth sits at a significantly higher elevation than every other Sierra Nevada resort, allowing for more consistent temperatures and better quality snow that's more on par with the resorts further inland. Mammoth also offers a sizable 3,000-acre skiable area, and the resort is home to some of the best expert terrain in the country thanks to its rugged footprint. Mammoth also boasts an absolutely fantastic terrain park setup. However, Mammoth does have a few issues that keep it from earning a higher spot on this list. While the resort offers competitive snow totals on average, dry spells between storms can occur. On top of that, Mammoth's unique location draws a ton of crowds from Southern California, leading to long lines during peak times, and for those who don't live within driving distance, Mammoth might be tougher to get to than some of the other resorts on this list. Mammoth may not be perfect, but it's a surprisingly well-rounded resort for where it sits in the US geographically. As with a lot of the other resorts we've covered so far, the biggest downside for a lot of people might be the price. One-day lift tickets go for over $200 during peak times, and while the Icon Pass and Mammoth Quad Pack products are an option through early December, accommodation costs at Mammoth can be quite pricey too. Continuing up this list, we reach a bunch of resorts in the Rockies, and of this bunch, we start with Colorado's Winter Park. Winter Park is an awesome mountain if you're looking for a destination that caters to a range of abilities, with dedicated easier terrain areas, unique intermediate bowls, and uniquely long and trying mogul areas in the Mary Jane Zone. Winter Park also offers fantastic trees throughout its footprint, and it's the one ski resort in Colorado that's actually served by train, with Amtrak service daily on weekends during the course season. But Winter Park doesn't stand out quite as much as some of its competitors in certain regards. The resort is somewhat lacking in terms of available lift access bowl terrain. In addition, Winter Park can get really crowded, so it's not a great choice for a busy weekend or holiday. Winter Park is a great family destination, and it's awesome for those who love trees and moguls, but other options might be better for those looking for truly extreme or iconic terrain. Winter Park lift tickets can get incredibly expensive if you wait to buy at the window, so those hoping to visit here should pick up an Icon Pass or Flex ticket product before they're off sale in December. Next up, we move a bit west to Summit County's Keystone Resort, which has seen quite the transformation over the past few seasons. This past season, the resort addressed what was arguably its biggest shortcoming, adding lift served above treeline bowl terrain for the first time ever. The resort also stands out for its mix of groomed, mogul, and tree terrain, and while operations have been significantly curtailed in recent years, it's still the only Interstate 70 corridor ski resort to offer twilight skiing on weekends and holidays. While Keystone's lift-served footprint is now a lot bigger than it used to be, the resort is still a lot smaller than its competitors when it comes to lift access slopes, with nearly 40% of its terrain requiring hiking to reach, get out of, or both. In addition, if you're looking for the biggest and baddest expert terrain, Keystone is not for you. True expert pitches and features such as chutes are essentially non-existent. Keystone has become a much more well-rounded destination in recent years, but other resorts still offer more complete packages, especially for experts. Just as with many of the other resorts on this list, Keystone's one-day lift tickets are absurdly priced, so if you're watching this video before early December, be sure to pick up an Epic Pass product while they're still on sale. Sticking with Colorado, the next mountain on this list is Copper, which sits just off Interstate 70 a few hours west of Denver. If you have a group of varying ability levels, Copper might be the best ski resort you can go to, with excellent terrain ranging from beginner to expert, all spread out across naturally insulated resort zones. If you can think of a terrain type, Copper has it covered, with a wide range of below treeline groomers, bump runs, glades, and high alpine bowls. But Copper is a bit more of a locally oriented ski area than all of the destinations higher up on this list, and while this isn't necessarily a bad thing, there are a few drawbacks worth mentioning. Most notably, outside of the bases and some popular frontside terrain zones, Copper's lifts are slow. Copper also isn't the most convenient place to stop in for a break on a cold day, with no indoor lodges on its backside or the furthest isolated Tucker Mountain area. Finally, if you're looking for an extensive ski town experience, Copper's base village doesn't have much going on after the slopes close, so other resorts may be better if Opry is a priority. Copper isn't perfect, but for the right demographic, it's a great choice. Regular lift tickets do get expensive, but if you plan in advance, you can get access for a much better deal using an Icon Pass product, or better yet, buying a Copper 4-pack. Sticking to Colorado for one more mountain, Breckenridge might be one of the best known ski destinations in the entire United States. The resort's massive footprint, exceptional terrain diversity, and excellent ski town make for a phenomenal package on paper. Breckenridge also stands out for its high alpine chops. An extensive network of bowl terrain spans a considerable portion of the resort's footprint. But at this point, Breckenridge might be too popular for its own good. Crowds are a serious problem during peak times. Breckenridge is also an incredibly wide resort, and getting across its 5 peaks throughout the day can be cumbersome and confusing. And while Breckenridge's high alpine bowls might be the most unique part about its footprint, the substantial wind exposure up there means that wind holds are common. Breckenridge definitely has the big mountain aesthetic to impress the typical destination goer, but its logistical issues might drive you a bit crazy. As with many of the other resorts we've covered, lift ticket rates have reached ridiculous rates in recent years, so be sure to pick up an Epic Pass product by early December if you want a remotely reasonable deal on access. Next up, we move to the great state of Montana to cover the one and only Big Sky. Big Sky offers a really unique experience for a US destination resort with a massive 5,850-acre footprint, genuinely fantastic terrain for skiers and riders of all ability levels, and a stunning facade. The top of the resort offers some of the most intense expert terrain one can find anywhere, with extraordinarily steep, extremely high consequence descents down iconic rock-riddled chutes. If you're traveling with a large group and have a liberal budget, Big Sky also offers a wide variety of upscale ski-in, ski-out condos that can sleep tons of people. But while Big Sky might look like the perfect US ski destination on paper, it has a couple of flaws that keep it just out of the top tier of this list. Most notably, the resort is somewhat of a logistical mess. Especially if you try to visit the more remote parts of the resort, there are slow or weirdly placed lifts in certain areas. A few notable choke points can cause long lines during the busiest visitation periods. And perhaps the most frustrating part about visiting Big Sky is that if you visit using an Icon Pass, Mountain Collective Pass, or lower tier Season Pass product, Lone Peak tram access is not included as standard and must be purchased on a per ride basis as an extra cost add-on. Regular lift tickets do now include the Lone Peak tram with no access restrictions, but given how expensive these can get, it's disappointing that those looking for a decent value visit to Big Sky won't get standard access to the only lift that serves the resort's best views, full vertical drop, and truly extreme terrain. Big Sky is well worth a visit for those looking for a remote, big mountain ski vacation with terrain for all abilities, but it has a few frustrating circumstances that can rub some people the wrong way. Lift tickets can actually be had for rates that aren't totally ridiculous if you buy in advance for a non-holiday period, but while you won't get the standard tram access, it might still be a better deal to visit using an Icon or Mountain Collective product. Next up, we move back to Colorado for the westernmost resort in the Interstate 70 corridor, Beaver Creek. This high-end resort is known mostly for its hospitality, with exceptional customer service and fantastic, well-thought-out facilities spread across the resort. But Beaver Creek offers a pretty compelling terrain experience as well, with exceptionally long mogul trails that will leave even the most in-shape skiers and riders tired. Beaver Creek offers McCoy Park, which is home to some of the best and most diverse beginner and low intermediate bowl terrain in Colorado, and the very technical Stone Creek chutes, which include a couple of mandatory cliffs on the hardest lines. Beaver Creek also sees fewer crowds than most of the other resorts on this list, and it can be a great option for a peak holiday getaway. But while Beaver Creek is very impressive, it isn't perfect, and its biggest drawbacks have to do with its terrain. Unlike nearly every other resort on this list, advanced and expert bowl terrain is completely non-existent, meaning that experienced skiers and riders looking for bowls will need to look elsewhere. In addition, despite the beautiful, wide-open meadows of McCoy Park, Beaver Creek is somewhat lacking in its intermediate terrain, especially in upper mountain areas. And while its location might keep crowds down, the 3-hour drive from Denver, and that's assuming no traffic along the way, may be a bit too long for some folks' tastes. The nearby Eagle Airport is a lot more convenient, but it's also more expensive and has fewer direct flight options. Beaver Creek doesn't have everything that a large US ski resort could offer, but for those who value a luxury-first resort experience, it's really hard to beat. Unfortunately, the high-end vibes come with extremely high lift ticket prices, and one-day adult rates now top out at an almost unbelievable $329. Beaver Creek is on the Epic Pass, so if you're even remotely thinking about visiting next winter, be sure to secure one of those day or season pass products before they're off sale in December. Next up, we move to what's arguably the best ski resort in southern Colorado, Telluride. Telluride offers a wide variety of terrain, with extensive options for intermediate to expert skiers and riders. The jagged, red-rimmed peaks that make up the resort and its surroundings are like no other large ski resort in the country, and the town of Telluride itself is one of the most picturesque but also fun ski towns out there. In addition, thanks to its very remote location, the resort rarely sees crowds, even on peak weekends and holidays. Telluride does have a few drawbacks, the biggest arguably being its access difficulty. Even if you fly into the closest regularly scheduled regional airport, the resort is still an hour and a half away from there. In addition, Telluride doesn't see quite the same snow totals as most of the other destinations on this list. Finally, a good amount of the highest elevation terrain takes significant hiking to reach, with the summit of Palmyra Peak, which also happens to be the highest point of any ski resort in the United States, taking over 2 hours to reach from the top of the nearest lift. Telluride may not be the best choice for those who value convenience or want to plan their ski trip before mid-February, but for an unforgettable late season ski vacation, it's really hard to beat. The biggest issue might be cost. Telluride's one-day adult tickets go for about $200 in today's world, and lodging in town tends to be very steep as well, especially if you don't book very far in advance. If you want to visit Telluride, the resort is on the Epic Pass, but the full version only, as well as the Epic Day Pass if you buy the highest tier and get at least 4 days of access. Next up, we move to the famously ritzy town of Aspen, where Snowmass takes the number 4 spot on this list. Snowmass checks the boxes when it comes to an upscale ski trip, with high-speed lifts nearly everywhere, fancy lodges readily available to stop in at all around the resort, and a walkable base village with luxurious hotels and designer stores. But the reason Snowmass ranks so highly on this list is because even besides its luxury bona fides, it's actually a really good ski resort. The mountain boasts over 3,300 acres of terrain, and it stands out for its wide variety of tree-defined trails, glades, and bowls, as well as its fantastic views from upper mountain areas. Snowmass isn't perfect, although its drawbacks are relatively minor. The biggest issue might be the cost of entry. The Aspen Snowmass complex is not cheap, and lodging within Snowmass Village, let alone anywhere in the Aspen area, is downright unaffordable for the average person. Snowmass is also located over 4 hours from the Denver airport, and flights from the closest regional airports, Aspen proper and Eagle, can be difficult logistically and expensive. Snowmass has very few real drawbacks, but it doesn't stand out quite as much as it could in a couple of ways to top this list. Like with its lodging, Snowmass's lift tickets are incredibly expensive, starting at over $200, although it is worth noting that they are usable at all 4 of the mountains in the Aspen Snowmass complex. Snowmass is also a member of the Icon Pass, albeit only the 4-figure full and base pass products, as well as the Mountain Collective Pass, which provides 2 days of access across all 4 Aspen mountains. Next up, we move to the bronze medalist on this list, Vail Mountain in Colorado. The Vail brand has become somewhat infamous over the years, but there's no doubt that the mountain that the company got its name from is the real deal. With over 5,300 skiable acres, Vail is gigantic. The resort also makes it speedy to get around, with high-speed chairlifts almost everywhere, and the mountain especially stands out for its most remote areas, with the uniquely expansive back bowls and supremely isolated blue sky basin providing unforgettable aesthetics. But while it's big and certainly upscale, a few circumstances keep Vail from topping this list. Perhaps the resort's biggest drawback is its relative lack of truly extreme terrain. Those looking for death-defying chutes and couloirs that require mandatory straightlining will not find them here. In addition, Vail's massive footprint can be very disorienting to get around, so if you get lost easily, the resort may not be for you. Vail might be the ultimate ski resort for those looking for a massive footprint and a pampering experience, but a couple of other resorts in the States excel just a little bit more. Like with Beaver Creek, Vail's lift ticket prices have gone up to almost unthinkable levels these days, so if you want to visit, be sure to get an Epic Pass product before they're off sale in early December. Moving on to our runner-up for the best US ski destination, we have Wyoming's Jackson Hole. This resort may sit in a quite remote location, but it does so many things well that it's easy to see why so many people view it as a dream destination. Jackson Hole is probably the toughest overall large ski area in the country. Not only does it have a series of extreme chutes and couloirs scattered throughout the footprint, most notably the famed Corbett's Couloir, but it's one of the ultimate endurance mountains as well, with a vertical drop that extends over 4,000 feet and allows for advanced and expert level pitches the entire way down. Jackson Hole has also really improved its lift fleet in recent years, with the vast majority of terrain now served by high-speed lifts, and the Teton range that makes up both the resort and its surroundings makes for an absolutely stunning backdrop. Jackson Hole's biggest drawback is probably the same as its biggest strength, its expert-oriented nature. The resort's beginner experience is almost an afterthought, and while plenty of intermediate terrain exists, it's a lot steeper than the blues one might find at most other resorts around the country. In addition, Jackson Hole primarily faces east, so even though the resort tends to see impressive snow totals each winter, if there happens to be a drought, the footprint is quite susceptible to freeze-thaw conditions. Jackson Hole won't be the best option for a ski vacation if you're still learning, and the resort's cost of entry is steep. Like every other top-tier mountain we've covered so far, one-day adult lift tickets can cost over $200. The resort is on Mountain Collective and the Icon Pass, but only the full and base plus versions. But for experienced skiers and riders, very little can match Jackson Hole. In fact, this resort arguably beats out every other ski destination in the US as a comprehensive package, except one. That's right, the interconnected Utah duo of Alta and Snowbird is our pick for the top ski destination in the United States. These little Cottonwood Canyon resorts would probably top this list already if viewed as separate entities, but when combined, they offer such an extensive array of advantages that they are really hard to beat. First off, Alta and Snowbird receive what's arguably the best natural snow, both quality and quantity-wise, of any destination on this list. While the snow is supremely dry and light, it's also frequent, and deep powder days are a common occurrence. The Alta Bird footprint also features some of the most extreme terrain in the US, with plenty of expert-oriented features across both resorts, as well as some of the most beautiful scenery out there, with an isolated, one-with-nature feeling that can only be brought out by the quality of peaks and general lack of buildup that both resorts offer. Alta and Snowbird also combine to boast a quite competitively sized footprint, with over 4,500 acres of skiable terrain between the both of them, and they're incredibly convenient as well, sitting an almost unbelievable 45 minutes from the Salt Lake City airport when road conditions are good. But while it tops this list, the Altabird complex isn't perfect. Perhaps the biggest issue is Alta's ban on snowboarding. If you want to ride on your next trip rather than ski, you'll have to stick exclusively with snowboard if you visit Little Cottonwood Canyon. In addition, neither resort has a particularly built-up town, and if the roads get bad, traffic and temporary highway closures can become issues. Access can also be somewhat complicated. If you're looking into multi-resort passes for next year, you'll need either the full Icon Pass, Icon Base Plus Pass, or Mountain Collective to access both Alta and Snowbird. If you want to access both mountains using a traditional lift ticket, Altabird tickets are only available at the window and can get quite expensive. But if you're looking for the ultimate stateside ski destination, the Altabird duo provides the snow, reliability, and sheer footprint size to fit that bill. So that's our comprehensive ranking of the major ski resort destinations in the United States. Here's a full breakdown of the overall mountain scores for each destination, along with their valuations in each category. While there are a ton of destination options in the US, they're not all created equal, but the good news is the top 10 to 15 destinations are so well-rounded that you're unlikely to have a bad time at any of them, and the selection of which one you choose probably comes down to personal preference. How'd we do? Would you change the order? We'd love to hear from you, so if you have any thoughts, hit us with a comment below. If you found this information helpful, be sure to like and subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss any of our content. And now, you can also support us on Patreon, where we've just released a new episode of the Mini Peak Pod detailing the process behind gathering all the footage for this video. Yes, we did personally visit all of these mountains, and yes, it did take us years to get this footage. Blue Square members and above get access to this episode and way more, and you can find out more information about all the amazing benefits you get as a Peak patron using the link in the description below. See you for the next one.